Elena Rivera sat alone on the edge of her bed, her fingers tangled in the hem of her sweater. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling in the walls. The city outside bustled as it always did, but inside, everything had stopped. Her phone buzzed. She didn't want to look. She knew who it was. Her mother. Again. For days now, since the accident, the calls had come non-stop. Elena's sister, Marissa, had vanished, and their family was in chaos. Elena had seen it on the news. Julian Hartwell's black Tesla wrapped around a pine tree off a cliffside road, rain pouring, red lights flashing, EMTs rushing. And now, Julian, the man everyone expected to become Marissa's husband, was in a coma. Elena barely knew him. She'd met him a handful of times. Tall, reserved, with the kind of gaze that made people straighten their spines. He barely spoke, but the world knew him. Julian Hartwell, the billionaire who built his empire before 30, the genius recluse with a tragic past and no living parents. He was the American dream dressed in tailored suits and silence. And he had been engaged to Marissa. The phone buzzed again. Elena finally picked up. Elena, her mother's voice came breathlessly, "We need to talk." An hour later, she sat across from her parents at the family home, simple, modest, warm. Her father, quiet but stern, rubbed his temples. Her mother held her hand, eyes rimmed in red. "Elena," her father said, "there's something the Hartwells have asked." "What?" "They want you to marry Julian." She laughed. A stunned, bitter laugh. "He's in a coma," she said. Her mother nodded slowly. "Yes, but the wedding was already planned. Papers were drawn. Their family is worried. About money, about appearances. You look enough like your sister. You're single. You're decent." Decent. A word that always sounded like a compliment and a punishment. Elena stared at them. "You want me to marry a man who doesn't even know me? Who's unconscious? Who loves Marissa?" "It's not about love," her father said coldly. "It's about survival. The family's debts, their home, his illness, it was all tied up in promises. If Elena didn't agree, they would lose everything. The Hartwells had offered to take care of them, quietly, if Elena agreed to the marriage. No publicity, no church, just a paper marriage until Julian woke up, if he ever did." She left without answering, but that night, she stood at the hospital window, staring at Julian. And said yes. The hospital room was sterile, humming with the low rhythm of machines. Julian lay still, a network of wires and beeping monitors surrounding him. His skin was pale, a faint bruise on his temple. The priest stood beside her, reading soft words in Latin. Elena's hands trembled. She wore a gray blouse and black slacks. Not white, not a dress, not a veil. There were no flowers, no guests, only the lawyer and the two parents from both families. When the priest asked her if she took this man as her husband, she whispered, "I do," her voice barely louder than breath. And then, as if echoing her vow, the heart monitor spiked. Just for a second, her eyes flicked to it. No one else seemed to notice. The papers were signed. Elena Rivera became Elena Hartwell. They moved her into the Hartwell estate, a sprawling gray mansion that perched over cliffs like something out of a painting. There were endless rooms, locked doors, expensive paintings, and cold stone floors. She was given the West Wing and told she could live there quietly. Her job was to wait. She wandered halls in slippers, read books in libraries untouched for decades, watched fog roll over the ocean. The Hartwell staff, minimal, barely spoke to her. The world believed the wedding had been postponed, not that a different bride had taken the vows. She began to visit Julian daily. At first, it felt strange, talking to a body. But there was something peaceful in it. Something honest. She told him about her life. Her studies. Her sister's tantrums. Their childhood in the Filipino immigrant neighborhood in San Diego. Her dreams of becoming a writer. Her dog, Macy, who had died when Elena was 12. The way the world smelled after rain. Julian never moved, but she began to feel something. A connection. Or maybe madness. She started reading to him. Poetry, newspapers, novels. One night, after reading a Neruda poem aloud, she felt his fingers twitch. "Julian," she whispered. He didn't respond. Weeks passed. Months. She began to forget she wasn't truly his wife. That this was all fiction. Until, one night, she fell asleep in the chair beside him, and woke to a voice. Elena. She jerked upright. His eyes were open, blinking, staring at her. Julian, she said, stunned. His lips moved again, slow, cracked. Where? Marissa. A nurse rushed in. Alarms were going off. Doctors followed. Elena stood frozen, heart thundering. He was awake. Julian recovered slowly but remarkably. He began physical therapy, speech therapy, reading newspapers again. But his memory was fractured. He knew who he was. Knew about the accident. But he believed he was still engaged to Marissa. The Hartwells begged Elena not to tell him the truth. He's too fragile, they said. He needs time, stability. So she lied. She told him they were married. That they loved each other. He looked at her strangely, but said nothing. At night, she lay in the guest room, sleepless. During the day, she cooked for him. Talked to him. Pretended. Until one evening, as she folded blankets in the parlor, Julian walked in. "Why don't you love me?" he asked. She froze. "I know something's wrong," he said. "You smile, but it's not real. You avoid me. Your hands are always cold. Why?" Tears welled in her eyes. She began, but she couldn't say it. He walked away. Then, one bright summer afternoon, Marissa returned. Thin, tired, with dark circles under her eyes, she arrived at the estate like a ghost from another life. She said she had been in Brazil, living with an artist, trying to forget everything. She asked to see Julian. They stood in the drawing room, staring at each other. "Why did you leave?" he asked, voice brittle. "I didn't love you," she said, honestly. "I didn't want to marry you. It wasn't about you. It was me. I panicked." Julian turned to Elena. "And you? What are you? A stand-in? A second choice?" Elena didn't flinch. "I married you because I had no choice. But what came after? It wasn't fake." He didn't speak to either of them again for 3 days. Then, quietly, he left. Packed a bag and drove away from the mansion without a word. Elena's marriage was annulled within the month. The Hartwells made no fuss. They thanked her, paid off her family's debts, let her go. She moved into a small apartment in Boston. Began teaching literature at a community college. Her name was still Hartwell legally, but she never used it. She never heard from Julian again. A year passed. She walked home from class one snowy afternoon and found a letter in her mailbox. No name, just handwriting she recognized. "Come to the lighthouse. Midnight, Maine." She didn't ask questions. She drove hours along the coast, the sky white with clouds, the world silent in the snow. The lighthouse stood tall at the edge of a cliff, glowing faintly. She climbed the stairs slowly. And at the top, Julian stood, older, steady. "I remembered everything," he said. She said nothing. "I remembered how you read to me. How you held my hand. How I woke up and saw your face. I didn't mean to lie," she said. "They forced me. I know." They stood in silence for a long time. He looked out at the waves crashing below. "I wanted to know if you ever told me the truth. About the books, the talks, the way you touched my hand." She nodded. "I did." He turned back to her. Reached out. "Then maybe we start over." She took his hand. And this time, it was real.